Hi, and welcome back to the Void Century podcast. I am Adam, and we are here to bring you chapter 1153 of One Piece, The Birth of Loki. Now, on the cover page, we continue with Yamato's story around Wano, and we see here Yamato meets up with Okikun, who is now the daimyo of the Ringo region. Ed?
Yeah, so we're going to continue with the story with Harold's flashback. We see him hanging out with baby Dory and Bragi. They're just like toddlers or like very young, like under the age of 10, I'd say. Really cute. But yeah, he's still kind of like twice the size of them. The narrator describes Harold's ancient blood and how it's kind of made him a jerk, mostly just because he's bigger than everyone else and he's the king, so he's just kind of like an entitled, spoiled brat. So we see Harold, he's bored a lot, picking his nose and just looking for fights and looking for challenges. And then we fast forward a bit, and Harold's an adult now, and they go to the kingdom of Bunt, which is a new place that we never heard about before. We see a ringmaster introducing a female giant. So this is like at a circus, and the townspeople are all fleeing away from the female giant who's kind of playing it up. She's like acting and pretending to be the savage, like scary monster giant. But Harold sees this and he sees the chain giant, and it just makes him so angry because how dare they? Like, this is my race. How can they like enslave a giant? So we skip to a panel of Harold's ship sailing away with Bunt Kingdom in the distance.
Harold introduces himself to the freed female giant. We see her actually slap some sense into him. She's enraged that he would do such a thing to destroy the kingdom. I guess Harold's reputation also precedes him. She insists that Harold turn around so she can apologize to the humans for burning down their village. Harold objects and she continues to beat him up. The female states that the humans actually saved her from death and gave her work. She states that Harold shouldn't see himself above humans, and he basically gives all of Elbaf and, by extension, giants a bad name. She then goes on to explain that Harold was just born big, therefore he didn't really develop his own strength, and that's kind of something that has really stuck with him, it seems. Harold kind of takes her words to heart, and then we see a couple panels of him just watching as she goes ahead and helps the humans and just watches them interact and be kind to one another. The giant guards ask Harold if they should set sail. He asks them why they are all just spacing out, and then he commands them to go ahead and rebuild the human village. We get a couple more panels of the giants and humans working together to rebuild this village, and we see that they're sharing different kinds of techniques and technologies, and they're just relishing over how different their cultures are. Um, Harold is also amazed at the quality of the silk that humans possess, and we see Harold actually bowing to the human king and apologizing for destroying the village. We get a montage of humans on Harold, and they're interacting much like Luffy would interact with the Tontatas. It's very cute, and then we see everybody have a party, and they just relish in their differences, and despite them being friends. Then we see that Harold has a new mantra that nothing in the world is meant to be destroyed. We go on to learn a little bit more about the female giant. She exclaims that she was born in an island named Samwanai in the South Blue, and basically exclaims she had a lot of turns in her life, but she even had to cross the red line and she landed here. And we see a couple panels of her and Harold interacting with humans they find on their journey and being kind and sharing techniques and technologies. And we have a panel of Harold interacting with this female giant, and they remark how Harold is growing softer and he's changing for a bit. And we see another guard exclaim, "Oh, I think it's just a phase. It's probably not going to last long."
So next we skip to 105 years in the past, and Harold is giving a decree to his his subjects, his fellow giants, telling them that they need to atone for their past. So Harald tells his men that he intends to travel the world to trade with the humans, and some of the giants disagree, explaining that some of some giants are just wild, like they can't be reined in. We then see the giants unanimously start to support Harald, and Harald exclaims that Elbath is blessed, and we get a montage of Harald studying diplomacy and forging bonds with various human nations.
We then get another time skip to 81 years ago in the past in Elbath. We get a decree of a baby being born. We get the female giant's name. Her name is Ida, and Harold and Ida welcome a baby into the world. Seems that little Haruden is being born, and we see there is a group of giants in silhouette that say Harold is unable to marry Ida because the baby is impure. She does not carry ancient giant blood, and the royal bloodline of Elbath must remain pure. And we then see Harold. He's like, my hands are tied. I'm sorry that it had to come to this. And that's just how culture of Elbath works. There's no point in us fighting it. Harold says they're always welcome in the village, but unfortunately they can't live together. And we then see Ida comfort little baby Haruden and say, at least we'll live in the same country as each other, so we'll be able to see each other a lot. We then get the introduction of another female giant, and I would assume the shadowy giant covenant says, this is your true love, Harold. This is who you're meant to marry and have an heir with. This is Estrid. What we see Estrid, she's delivered with the character panel and everything. She's introduced as a descendant from the Brewers village. She's a prestigious daughter, and we get kind of some facts about Estrid. She studies geomancy. She has pure ancient blood, and she meets Harold, tells Harold that he is to be the love of her life, and forget all about Ida and that other little kid. Like, you belong to Estrid now. And we then get a panel of Estrid ordering all the guards around. She said the Harold spirit is escaping to the east. We have to close all the windows. The mirrors, they're in a 5-pointed star kill position. You have to get it out of here. And then demands that, excuse me. And then Estrid goes to give Harold a gift. Estrid bestows upon Harold Asla, the horse of good fortune. She states that it's a gift from her clan. It's the perfect mount for a king, and says that this horse is going to bring you great luck. We actually see the guards are remarking why the horse is so large, and it appears to have 8 legs. We then see Estrid demand that the guards bring all the jewels into her treasury chambers to ensure that the fortunes are always in the favor of the king, and then goes on to decree that from thenceforward they are only to eat off of silver and with silver utensils for all of their meals. We then get another time skip from about 70 years ago, in which we see Harold maintaining trade with the humans, and they also exclaim to the humans they share technology, navigational technology of the pole stars. And we see Harold showing humans how to navigate the seas, and they also remark that 70 years ago the seas were rougher back then. When we then see Harold regale his people about a time he went to Fishman Island and met the Mermaid King and saw mermaids, and then want to go ahead and remark that fishmen themselves are people that carry the blood of the ocean, and that fishmen themselves can speak to the sea and talk to sea creatures.
All right, next we skip again to 63 years ago. Harold was away, and a baby was born in Elbath. It's baby Loki. And we see an image of Loki, and he has really scary looking eyes. It's kind of like black on the outside and kind of like cat-like or demon-like. Like the pupils are vertical slits. So it's kind of that type of look. So Estrid is horrified when she sees the baby's eyes, and she claims that Loki's not my child, and she says the guards need to lie to the king and tell him that Loki didn't survive birth and it was stillborn, and calls Loki a monster. So the first thing Loki does as a baby is reach out to his mother, but she did not she did not reach back and comfort him. Instead, what she ended up doing was she took baby Loki, this newborn infant, into the lower realm to be left for dead. She actually drops him off the Adam tree, very, very high. We see a graphic panel of Loki climbing up the Adam tree, and he is, again, a baby, an infant, and he is all bruised and battered up. He's got blood. He's got these little, like, imp-like devil horns. And yeah, his entire body just looks covered in scrapes and bruises. So next next we see Estrid packing up, and she's getting her stuff ready to leave to return to her own village. And she says that she never wants to give birth again. There's actually a section where the narrator exclaims that the most unfortunate souls are rejected by their mothers, which is really sad. The guards tell Estrid that the baby is returning from the realm of the dead. And this is actually where we see Loki climbing up the tree. And then we see these like dead animals at the base of where the tree was. So I can only guess that they may have attacked Loki, and Loki had to defend himself against these animals. And then we cut over to the top of the Adam tree where the castle is, and see that Queen Estrid has fallen ill. Estrid tells the guards to dispose of the child still after they say that he's climbing back up. And she, I guess, repeats that there's a prophecy that Harald's own son will kill him. And the guards kind of heard her say this before, and they're like, oh, not that again, like, stop overreacting type of thing. So she must have been saying that all the time. We see Harald being diplomatically blocked by the world government. We then see Ida and little Hasrudin discussing visiting baby Loki. And Hasrudin says he refuses to recognize Loki as his brother, so he's already not a fan of Loki, unfortunately. And then the narrator says that from then on, anything that happened to Elbaf was blamed on Loki's curse.
What a way to end a chapter, Ed. I feel bad for poor Loki. Never knew love his entire life. It's sad.
Yeah, it's tragic, honestly. He got rejected by his own mother. She probably fell sick quickly after and passed away because we don't see her in present day. She might actually just still be at her own village, potentially.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The first thing I want to really kind of speculate on is the giant council. Who are they to have power over the king and insist that the king have relations with whomever they dictate? I think it's very strange. Why would they insist that ancient giants would rule Elbaf? I I mean, besides Harald and Ors and Estrid, we don't really see any other ancient giants in Elbaf. So what do you think the deal is there?
Yeah, so we've only really seen them as these like shadowed figures. So we only see kind of like their outlines, and everything else is in black. And I don't know, they just kind of seem like almost like the world government just for Elbaf. And funny enough, they might be allied with the world government potentially, because either way, we know that they have prophecies that they're following. So at the end of the day, I think that they're just trying to either follow these prophecies to make sure that Elbaf does well and is prepared for like a final battle or something, or they're pretending that these are prophecies and they're actually trying to get Elbaf positioned to align with the world government and Emu.
I think it's very interesting that they are a hierarchy on top of the government of Elbaf, much like the Gorosei, right? So I think it's very interesting that we have these shadowy silhouetted figures that are dictating things from behind the shadows. My little headcanon theory is if these guys are allied with the world government in some way, shape, or form, I think it's possible that Harold and Estrid themselves aren't fully ancient giant. Because at that point, if they both have the recessive trait for ancient giants, it's not really a secret at that point that a demon baby would literally be born. And we see that the world government, at least at the higher echelons, are involved in like demon and chaos magic. So wouldn't they want a demon to be born in some way, shape, or form, especially if they're looking toward causing chaos in Elbaf and potentially controlling it?
Yeah, I think that they would. And I think that Loki's mother, well, Astrid, she probably was aware because she was aware of the prophecy, and she also wanted to get rid of that pentagram attack mirror or whatever it was, 5 point star mirror thing away from their room. So she had a bunch of ideas to potentially mitigate that. And it ended up that the prophecies that she was taught or knew about kind of came true because, yeah, Loki ends up being the one blamed for the murder of King Harold.
So, do you think the Giant Council themselves were in some way responsible for, I don't want to say like influencing Loki to kill Harold, but we see that Loki does not kill Harold. Do you think this Giant Council was responsible for the guards killing Harold?
Yeah, yeah, actually, I do. So I have kind of some thoughts about this. First thing is the giant council, we only see them as like shadowy figures. And in the scene where we see King Harold's death, we also see them as shadowy figures as well. So like the bunch of weapons stabbed through Harold, that was all kind of like shadowy. So there's already kind of that link between the giant council. And then also we know that the giant council was against Hadrudin being the heir of Elbaf and the heir of King Harold. But he is the older son, and perhaps King Harold saw something in Hadrudin that he liked and appreciated, and maybe he decided to name him the actual heir of Elbaf, and the giant council said no, and Harold is like, well, I'm king, I'm going to do it anyway, and that's when they turned on him. So that's kind of where my mind is at with this whole thing.
Hey, there is one thing I did want to note too, if I can cut in here a little bit. So in that shadowy death scene for Harold, right? That's also where we see, oh, I forget his name.
Ja Rule?
Yes, we see, very good. Thank you. We see Jarwul get stabbed in the head, right? We are speculating on the sword. On page 2 of this chapter, we actually do see Harold laying down on his ship, and we see a sword next to him. And I checked the panels from the previous chapter. The hilt of the sword seems to match up. So, previously, we didn't get a chance to see any of the swords. And now we do see, in fact, that Harold does have a sword. So, what do you think would allow Harold to stab Jarul? Do you think Jarul? Do you think he could potentially be one of the shadowy figures that was pulling the strings? And now that he got a sword through the head, his disposition has changed completely.
No, I think it's more likely that one of those other giants that turned on Harold just took Harold's sword and stabbed Jarl. That's what I think happened.
It's very interesting to speculate on. Well, I guess if we don't want to speculate on the Giant Council further, one of the things I did want to note is I was really interested by Estrid and her geomancy magic. She seems to know quite a bit about some esoteric things in the One Piece universe. The one thing I wanted to point out that really stuck out to me was, again, that 5 point mirror kill configuration. I really wanted to connect it to the world government because we know they use stars and pentagrams to do their chaos magic. So if the giants are an ancient race and magic itself is such an ancient knowledge, it would make sense that real recognize real in a way. If you're familiar with esoteric and magical arts, you would be familiar with the other domains, not necessarily your own, right? So if I specialize in earth magic, I would also be aware that, you know, perhaps psychic magic or chaos magic are things that exist and other practitioners can utilize. So I thought that was very interesting. And also, the silver platter thing really piqued my interest because even though the guards remark that it was just something opulent, we know in very many religions and, of course, in stories, it's a trope that silver as a metal is known for purity and purifying things, famously with werewolves, but also with vampires and other kinds of demon and monsters of the undead.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting as well. And I think that maybe Estrid was onto something. Like, we don't really get many scenes with her just because it's just a flashback and it's going by really quickly. Decades and decades are passing in pages. So maybe she actually was onto something.
Uh,
And
There is one more point I do want to make. The fact that Estrid did fall ill after she gave birth to the baby. If she was protecting Harald with her magic, it would make sense that they would want to take her out to get to Harald in some way, shape, or form.
true, yeah. So that could potentially be the reason why she fell ill. Yeah. All right. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the horse. So in the official Viz translation, the horse is called Asla, but while we were preparing this podcast episode, we were using a previous translation by a fan, so unofficial translation, and the horse was called Ashra. So I kind of did some digging about Ashra, and first off, it's found in Indian religions, and they're described as like power-seeking beings related to devas, which devas obviously they have in like Hinduism, they've got like multiple arms, and then and so does Aslo, the horse. It has 8 legs, and then also in Buddhist religion, Ashra are known as either titans or anti-gods. So in this case, it's a giant horse. So it kind of fits both the Indian and Buddhist or religions definitions. And then also, I guess Zoro's conquerors technique is called Ashra. You want to talk about that one, Adam?
I just thought it was very notable that Zoro's Conqueror's Hockey technique manifests as Ashura, which is a Buddhist figure, and it just so happens to be like his final technique that we see in the story. So it's very interesting that Zoro utilizes, of course, 9 swords in this form, but also Ashura is known to have like 8 legs and I guess a head. I don't know if it's any kind of significance. I just thought it was notable.
Yeah, I think that that is notable that Zoro has one more, and it's because he uses his head as a way to use one of his swords. So yeah, the next part about this I want to talk about Asla the horse is, again, it's got 8 legs. So in Norse mythology, I want to go to Norse mythology just because we're in Elbaf and there's a lot of Norse mythology call outs in this entire arc. So in Norse mythology, there actually is a horse with 8 legs, and it's named Sleipnir, and it is Odin's horse. So the horse of the king, and Asla was gifted to the king of Elbaf, so it's the horse of the king. And it's also connected with the world of the dead, but I'm not like super knowledgeable in Norse mythology, but I just found that to be kind of interesting just because we have an underworld in Elbaf, and also I do think me and Adam have talked about this already before, but I do think that we're kind of moving into Ragnarok of Elbaf, and at the end of this arc, Elbaf will be destroyed potentially. So that's kind of, yeah, what I was thinking about with the 8-legged horse Sleipnir's connection.
I'm of the mind that perhaps the horse is enhanced with the devil fruit in some way. I find it hard to believe that there's like a 8-legged horse stable somewhere in the Brewer Village, you know, on a tree branch in Elbaf somewhere. I think perhaps the horse has some kind of devil fruit, perhaps even a Sleipnir devil fruit, but you just don't know. We've already seen the spider fruit. I don't know many other animals or mythical figures that have 8 legs particularly. I just thought it was very interesting to kind of speculate perhaps if the horse itself has a devil fruit or is perhaps some kind of ancient race of horse, much like we or I assume there is with the long-legged elephants that we see with Zunisha. I also wanted to note too that the horse itself, Asla, was noted to be a force of good luck, a good luck charm. Estrid was aware of the prophecy that Harold was to be killed by his own son, so perhaps this was meant to counterbalance that by giving him something that would increase his luck. So I think it was very interesting that even though Estrid was shown to be, a spoiled brat and perhaps like a princess type, I feel like behind the scenes she was setting up things to prevent Harold from dying and to ensure he would live on or not fulfill the prophecy. She seemed actually to really love Harold.
Yeah, I don't really get the impression that she was malicious or anything like that. I mean, it did kind of seem like a convenient, hey, like forget about the other girl, like I'm your true wife. But like outside of her kind of being seemingly spoiled and like she wants to be a pampered queen, she doesn't seem, well, yeah, I guess she did abandon her own son. So that's kind of like definitely by far the worst thing that she did was just let him like throw him off the tree and let him fall like stories and stories down and wishing he died. So that's probably the worst thing she's done. But in terms of like being married to Harold, it doesn't seem like they were very romantically like in love or anything like that, but she didn't also seem to be malicious towards him either.
All right, can I just go a little tinfoil hat here? So, I mean, we've already touched on the point that we think Estrid was well acquainted with ancient magics, right? She's a geomancy practitioner. If she's aware of chaos magic, then she would be aware of demons. I don't think it's like a far stretch to think of that. Like, if she looked at this thing in the face and she's like, I literally gave birth to a demon, like, she knows what that means. Can you really blame her? I mean, Loki is a child, obviously not a demon, but at the same time, I'm not trying to excuse her. What she did is like really inexcusable. But what I'm saying is, did she know Loki was a demon?
Yeah, I mean, if you step back from that angle and look at it from her standpoint of, hey, I know this prophecy where potentially my own son is going to be the one that kills his father and the king, and let's just assume for the sake of argument that she loves him, then yeah, like she could be horrified to see that the baby that she just bore looks literally demonic. It's got horns, it's got demon eyes, like all of that, and one step closer to fulfilling that prophecy. So I could see, you know, if she actually truly loved Harold, that being an issue for her.
I think that they were both half ancient giant in some way, and that the true form of an ancient giant is demonic in some way, shape, or form. I think that would well align with at least my theory, my pet theory, that the ancient giants were just normal giants that sold their souls or were corrupted by the world government in some way, shape, or form. And by ensuring that ancient giants rule Elbath, ensure that the world government at least controls Elbath in some way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, so I want to talk about something that I saw about the most recent One Piece volume, and it updated some information about Gunko, our favorite god's knight. So she actually belongs to the Mamayer family, and Mamayer is like we saw that name once before during Kuma's flashback. They were at the God's Valley, part of like the whole trying to kill the slaves group competition. So yeah, so she's part of like a celestial dragon family, and her she was referred to as Gunko Gu, and Gu I guess denotes that she's a female celestial dragon, as opposed to the male alternative, which is Sei. So we've actually heard that Emu is called Emu Sei, and Sei is used to denote male celestial dragons. So This might be confirmation that emu is actually male in gender.
So are these suffixes just honorifics that they would use?
Yeah, I think that this is just honorifics for celestial dragons and like in particular. So we also see the gu suffix or honorific used on Charlia, who's also a celestial dragon. So that kind of links it as a female honorific.
Interesting. So I guess what you're telling me is that everybody who thought Emu was Mother Earth or Mother Sea is now in shambles. But to that point too, I find it very interesting that Estrid herself was well acquainted with geomancy, which is earth magic, and we still have the idea that Emu represents the sea in some way. So earth versus sea and the current world being under the ocean, it's very interesting.
Yeah, true.
Oh, interesting. Emu say, emu see. You think it's a coincidence?
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit. If you want to move forward, I just want to talk about Loki's eyes a little bit. I speculate at least that he's some form of like full giant, or excuse me, full ancient giant, which is demonic in some way. He fits the phenotype completely for like a demon or an imp. I noticed that his pupils had vertical slits, much like a snake. I think it's just a quintessential representation of a demon, at least in Western depictions.
Yeah, especially in his baby, like when he's an infant, he looks like a little imp devil. Like the only thing he's missing is wings. But yeah, I was wanting to talk about the eyes in particular because they do kind of look snake-like, So like I don't know. We'll see when it's colorized. I'm gonna guess that they're gonna be looking more demonic-like, but like there's some similarities with like the vertical slit. So it's making me, still kind of lean into the whole Loki might still have used that, or still might have eaten that Jormungandr devil fruit, only because, like maybe the devil fruit saw that Loki has snake-like features and felt attuned to it and wanted them to find each other and Loki be, have its powers. So that's kind of, it's not a strong argument by any means, but it was just something else to tag on to the Jormungandr devil fruit theory.
Yeah, I think his representation as the stereotypical imp, I think is very interesting. He's just missing the pitchfork and the arrow-shaped tail, but who knows? Maybe our favorite God's Knight will show up soon and give him that little arrow tail that he needs.
Well, you know who has wings is the Lunarians, which do they have tails?
I don't recall the Lunarians having tails. No.
Yeah, I don't
They
remember either. But yeah, they also are darker skinned and yeah, I don't think that they have tails. I'm looking at an image of King right now, and I don't see a tail. He just wears a suit.
So, do you think Lunarians are in some way corrupted sky races?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards as well. I'm thinking that there might be kind of like a good guy, like the white Othello board pieces, and then the bad guy, the black Othello board pieces. So when they flip sides, so when Skypians flip to the black side, they turn into Lunarians, just
In-
kind of like with like the giants and the ancient giants.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, I don't want any of our listeners to take this the wrong way, but Ed, have we seen any black fishmen in the story?
You know, we haven't really seen any fishmen that look particularly good or evil. Like, I would say that, the ones that look more menacing and evil tend to have pointy teeth, but that's just because, some fish, like if they're sharks, they have pointy teeth. So I can't really say that. I mean, like, the only thing I can think of is like clearly Neptune and Shirahoshi look very soft and quote unquote white pieces. And then like the Hody or who is the one from like the
Arlong.
first arc? Yeah, Arlong. Like
Arlong.
they have. shark blood and pointy teeth, so they would, they characteristics of like the black Othello piece, but I don't think it's very clear just because there's so much diversity in sea animals and marine life that I can't say for sure for that one.
If we want to touch on the fishmen just a little bit too, I thought it was very interesting that when Harold was talking about fishmen, that he explained that they had the blood of the sea. Like, we know genetics and, some form of inherited will do play a role in the One Piece story. Here we are speculating on ancient giant blood and the genetics behind that. I find it very interesting that when we're discussing this, we're also discussing that fishmen, have this unique blood that contains the sea. Do you want to speculate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I am not really sure exactly what he meant. Like to me, I just read it as, oh, they live inside the sea, so they have, they got like fish blood. Like they're literally related to fish. So yeah, I mean that's kind of really what it is. They have fish blood. That we have people that are land people, we have people that are giant people, we have people that are sky people with wings, and we have people that are fish people. So we've got like all these different races in the One Piece universe, and this race is the blood of the sea.
Here's a good question for you. Now, I speculate that the ancient kingdom was once a kingdom that contained all the races working together in perfect harmony, right? Do you think that fishmen were a thing basically before the Void Century or before some kind of ancient war caused them to pick sides?
Yeah, I think they were a thing just because we know that Poseidon it is one of the ancient weapons, and that was used during the Void Century battle. So I'm pretty sure that they existed back then. But yeah, I again, I don't know how any of these races that we've been talking about originally were created. Oh, there's also the minks too, blood of animal, we can say.
Mm.
But like, I don't know how they were originally created. Like, I would imagine that minks and fishmen evolved in a similar manner, where except one of them evolved from animals on Earth, like on the land, and one of them evolved from animals under the sea. And then also Skypians potentially evolved either they're aliens and they came from outer space and started habitating on this like planet of One Piece, or they also evolved from maybe birds. So like we I don't know, but there's something about this land, about this planet that humans kind of evolve into different types of humans based on where they live, I guess.
That's another interesting thing I thought of during your explanation too, is minks are the only race that we currently see that actually get their power from the moon.
Well, also minks, they can turn Sulong, which is, if we think about it, Sulong is kind of similar to like what's happening with Dorian Bragi and turning sides. Because when they go Sulong, they have a harder time, or sorry, they grow stronger, they grow larger, they look different. Are they more violent when they're Sulong? Or, like, are they more like primal and savage? I don't
Yeah, they
remember
lose their
exactly.
minds. That's why you have to train with it because you basically give in entirely to your animal instinct.
Yeah, so I think that potentially for them, yeah, I think that it's very related to what's happening with Emu and those Othello pieces and transforming people from one side to the other. I think that maybe they're just able to do it at will.
Interesting. But they also made it a point with the Sulongs too that Sulongs were always pure white. So perhaps there is like a corrupted Sulong in some way.
Oh, true. They were white. I forgot about that aspect. But yeah, there still is a similarity though. Maybe it's like the opposite. Maybe their animal form is the black piece and the Sulong form is the white piece and the buffed version. Like I don't know. Another thing that's white is Luffy Gear 5 is white. So, perhaps it's the reverse. So whenever you know, Emu's opposite transforms somebody. They go from being a bad guy to a good guy, and then they turn big and white. So, like there's a lot of a lot of different ways that this can shake out.
Like I keep thinking of things, but Wano too, right? The I forget the specific name, but the Kozukis themselves were affiliated with the full moon, and the Kurozumis were the black coal, right? They were the ones that were trying to corrupt and take over the samurai for the world government.
Sure, yeah, and that's a parallel with the Othello pieces as well. Sure.
So I think it's very interesting. It seems that the more we look, the more we find, and that's one thing I really do love about the story is the world building is there's nothing else like it.
Yeah, I do think that there is something with the Sulams being able to transform. I do think that there's something about that. I did only just thought about it during this recording. Like we didn't write this one down.
Do you think that could be due to just like the mother flame or some of the earth magic we know, or do you think it could be related to some kind of like chaos magic or pact they made with the world government to go nuts?
Yeah, I really don't know. I just think that there's like entirely different game that's being played by Emu that the good guys aren't aware about because probably the Void Century.
It's very interesting because like if you look, you can actually almost see the game that Emu's playing, right? If you look back in the story and you really do check out that dichotomy between white and black, I feel like you really do open up your eyes a little bit more and you can see things that Oda laid out that you might not have been able to see before. And I mean, Emu himself, herself, whatever, themselves are in completely black silhouette at all times. So it only makes sense. Like he's controlling the black piece is literally king or queen of the black side. So
And you
I
know
know
who else is
Othello.
always in shadow is the giant like council. So that's another thing they're related to with Emu.
It's true. So I think we're on to something, Ed.
All right, finally, I want to talk about baby Loki. So, first off, how does just this infant, like, I don't care if it's got like 100% or 80%, whatever percentage ancient giant blood, but how does it survive such a fall? Because, yes, he's a baby and he's going from the top of this castle, which is on the top of this giant tree, the world tree, the Atom tree, all the way to the underworld, where actually Loki has basically lived most of his life now. And then we see like carcasses of dead giant animals. So I can only assume that he was attacked by these animals and he had to defend himself and he killed them and like he's just born. He hasn't even like eaten food yet. And he's probably hungry, but like he doesn't have teeth yet, so he probably can't even eat these animals that he's slain. And then right away, all he's doing is he's climbing back up the Atom tree to get back to his mother who doesn't love him. So yeah, it's just like super sad and what a tremendous feat. Like that's just like remarkable. I don't think any other baby in the story could do this, which kind of goes to say that he's going to be very powerful in present day as well. And then, yeah, I just think that this was just really a remarkable feat and baby Loki, very tragic tale. Like Loki as a whole is tragic and it's remarkable that he grew up to have like the demeanor he even has right now. Like he's kind of like quick to anger and all of that, but also he has that charisma. So it's just really interesting to see that this baby that was neglected has has grown up to have that charm, you know?
So Ed, I'm not trying to take anything away from baby Loki's feats. I will say that it is terribly sad that Loki has never known love, and the moment he was born, he was cast out into the lower realms. But I was just thinking, I mean, how are we supposed to expect a baby, even one with tremendous durability and constitution, to survive a fall off of a giant tree that's giant to giants into, a perilous below of ice mountains? I think perchance, do we think this is where Loki could have met Masa? We see that Masa, through the Denden Mushi, has a gigantic beard. I mean, I couldn't think of anything better to cushion a falling baby than a giant beard, perhaps. What are
It's
your thoughts on
possible.
that?
Yeah, it's possible. Another possibility is he landed on those animals, so he didn't actually kill them. He just like fight them. He just landed on them and killed them that way. But yeah, it could be Masa. Like that's not a bad theory. We have no idea who Masa is yet. So yeah, I we don't have any evidence to say either way. So I think we'll just have to keep reading.
100%. I look forward to it. Again, we are on break next week, unfortunately. This is going to be a break chapter. There will be a break next week, but we'll see if we can put anything together for our loyal listeners. Again, this is Adam and Ed. This is chapter 1153 of One Piece, and we are the Void Century Podcast. Catch us anywhere that you find podcasts at the Void Century Podcast. We are also available on Gmail at the Void Century Podcast at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys. Bye.